Squirrel Bait here, and welcome to Going Sideways, where I discuss current events that affect our preparedness and our freedoms. And I wanted to give you a little more information today about the brain implant research of Dr. Jose Delgado that I mentioned in the other video. I wanted to get a little more into the actual research itself for you today. I have 3 articles here. 2 are from Yale, right? Yes. 2 are from Yale University. One's Yale Scientific and one's Yale University itself. And the other one is from Scientific American about this gentleman's research. So, here's what I want you to know about. And of course, links to everything will be down below for you. And this is relative to current events. And I want you to pay close attention to the dates on how long ago this was, okay? And remember things I have said in the past. All right, so here we go. We are going to start off with Yale Scientific. This is dated February 13th, 2011, and it's titled The Brain-Machine Connection, Humans and Computers in the 21st Century. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jose Delgado is a neurophysiologist. Well, he was at Yale University from 1946 to 1974. Okay. And one of his innovations was a device known as a stimoceiver. It's a pacemaker-like device that would electronically stimulate a certain area of the brain when triggered by a remote-controlled electrical transmitter. Remote-controlled. The brain receiver. Implanted in the brain. This device provided Delgado unprecedented control of an animal's movement and emotional state. Using this device, he dramatically demonstrated his control by behavior. He stopped a charging bull, a bull charging at him. He stopped that bull using his handheld radio transmitter to the device implanted in the bull's brain. Now, the idea of his research was to help with mental illness that is not responsive to other treatments, because back then they were still trying to do lobotomies and stuff on people, so this would have been an alternative to having a frontal lobotomy, okay, as well as electroshock and all this other crazy stuff they were doing to people. Well, DARPA, by the way, paid for all this. This was all paid for by the military. Because, the military cares so much about the mentally ill that they have a lot of interest in trying to help mentally ill people. Yeah. Yeah, right. So, there's that one. The next one. This one is from Yale EDU. Department mourns loss of brain stimulation research pioneer. Dr. Delgado's groundbreaking research demonstrated that by stimulating different regions of the brain, one could move limbs, induce emotions such as fear or rage. You hear me? You hear me now? Some of his most extensive studies focused on regions of the brain that regulated aggression. If you can turn it down, you can turn it up, right? Yeah. Come a long way since this guy's time, haven't we? In 1969, Dr. Delgado, by the way, also published a book called Physical Control of the Mind Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society. And he did that thing with the bull, by the way, in 1965. So this is the one we're going to talk about the most here. This is from Scientific American. This is the one we're going to spend a little time on. This is dated September 25th, 2017. It is by a gentleman called John Horgan, and he says that this is an edited version of a 2005 article that he wrote. And the title of this is Tribute to Jose Delgado, legendary and slightly scary pioneer of mind control. In part because it was relatively unencumbered by ethical regulations. Unencumbered by ethical regulations. Now, those of you who are familiar with the MK programs, notice the dates. And those of you who are familiar with the unethical experimentation on the general public without their permission or knowledge, yes, the populace here in the United States have been the subjects of experimentation around the same time frame. Look it up. So, his research even surpassed much of what's being done today. Well, today we're not allowed to do some of the things that he was doing. And some of the things he was doing I don't think is in here. Alrighty. So, again, talked about sending a radio signal to a device implanted in the brain. This was back in late 60s, early 70s. Where are we now? Just so you know. He also implanted radio-equipped electrode arrays, which he called stemosevers, which I mentioned before, in dogs, cats, monkeys, chimpanzees, gibbons, and humans. With a push of a button, he could evoke smiles, snarls, bliss, terror, hunger, lust, and other responses. Frankenstein type stuff, isn't it? All right. So he designed radio-equipped stemosevers as small as quarters. Again, this is back in the late 60s, early 70s, which could be fully implanted in subjects. Fully implanted in subjects. A battery pack strapped to the head or worn around the neck supplied the power transdermally. Delgado also invented implantable chemotrodes, which could release precise amounts of drugs directly into the brain. So there's also technology to release slow-release chemicals into a person's brain. In case you didn't know that. You know, I can't help but think what we must have today. Picture like a square chip like from your computer with all these little wires, all these little wires, all these little wires, and then going down into the brain, all these little wires just kind of encasing your brain. I'm sorry, that's what I think of. All right. Some of his research, again, talked about behavioral changes. Here's two examples. A 36-year-old female epileptic who was a very proper woman, which what they mean back then is very polite, doesn't flirt, prim and proper. Okay? You get it. After stimulation, she started giggling, making funny comments, and flirting with researchers. A sullen 11-year-old epileptic boy who was, again, very introverted, very quiet, became extremely chatty and friendly and talked about how he'd like to be a girl. So they can induce behavioral changes through a brain implant that they can control remotely. Now, this is before Wi-Fi and everything. This is before the internet. Radio signals. Imagine what they can do now. Oh, you got it. Oh, I saw some light bulbs go off. Yeah. All right. Yeah, again, it mentions here stimulating their brains by pressing a button on a handheld radio. Critics speculated that the military wanted to create cyborg soldiers that could kill on command. Delgado says his military sponsors never expressed interest in such applications. At the time, the technology was very crude, he says. The only thing we could do was increase or decrease aggressive behavior. Increase or decrease aggressive behavior. But not to direct aggressive behavior towards a specific target. Maybe they expected that, I don't know. They generally don't tell the person what they're doing and what they want it for. They generally don't keep them fully informed. So now, back to the article. Noting that the power and precision of electromagnetic pulses falls off dramatically with distance, Delgado doubts whether remote mind control is possible. Well, we have Wi-Fi now. Cell towers. Little phones rather than the big, remember the power packs and big cell towers. Yeah, we have Wi-Fi now. Just saying. So the other thing I wanted to say is back to the experimenting on people and so forth. Experimenting on vets is something that, again, that MK Ultra programs, the unethical experimentation on the populace. There's a lot that they did with prisoners and vets. Now with vets are perfect to play these games on and to experiment on because they have their own hospitals. So it's not like somebody not knowledgeable about the programs are going to stumble upon a microchip in someone's head or a computer chip in someone's head because they have to go to the VA hospitals. So if a doctor sees one on someone, they'll go, "Oh yeah, he's one of the guys." Where a civilian hospital might wig out. Somebody straight out of med school, having no idea stuff like this happens, would wig out. So they completely control the medical care of the person so they can also observe them. So like if they're exposed to a chemical, they can observe the effects because they can follow their medical records. They are in absolute total control of their medical records and them. They decide whether or not what kind of treatment they get or not so that they can monitor them. So that makes them kind of perfect. The other thing is that when you're dealing with mind control, dealing with traumatized people is a little easier because you have to break them. And remember, part of the military is break you, right? Well, then you send them off to a war, and then they come back. They're just prime. They're like the perfect subject for mind control, aren't they? Yeah. I'm not saying PTSD doesn't happen. Trust me, I know it does. I know somebody with it. But you take somebody like that, you can do anything you want with them, really. Right? The military is also taught to obey. Obey, 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 obey. So you put obey with traumatized, with technology, and the fact that they have their own hospitals. Is it any wonder? Is it any wonder? Yeah. So when you hear about the deep state, nobody really knows what that is. Well, here in the United States, every country, by the way, has this. Because ultimately, they are like councils, if you will, they're like clubs that belong to a larger organization that you can call the Illuminati, the Masons. It's all interconnected. It's all the same stuff. So the deep state here is very easy. For those of you who don't really understand what that is, it's folks that we don't elect. People who run DARPA. Okay? And DARPA, NSA, CIA, all the alphabets, it's all. Okay? And this is the kind of stuff that they fund. That way they can say, we don't do it. We don't do research in that. No, they have other people do it. Rather than hire this guy to work for them. They could have just hired this guy, right? No. And they did it through the university. Yeah. These university hospitals, I don't trust them. No, I really, really don't trust them. Look it up. Unethical human experimentation. Look it up. And you will find some patterns. Thank you for watching. I just wanted to bring all this to your attention. It is relevant to the times we live in. Take care. And don't forget, question everything, including everything I say.